Hey everybody, April Butt here, functional nutritionist, 3 Elements online. So today the health topic of conversation is the stress connection. It's really critical that we talk about the mental and emotional aspects that impact on our health because I'm a firm believer that we feel the way we think. So if we focus our attention first and foremost on our mental functioning, our attitude, our mood, our belief, the health of our nervous system, then the rest of health throughout the body functions a lot easier and the journey is a lot smoother. So stress. We all are very aware that we live in very stressful times and very busy times. And this is detrimental to our health when we're living in that stress response day in, day out. So here I'm going to explain to you what stress actually is, what happens in the body when we are in that stress response, the hormonal cascade that happens when we are in that fight or flight response, and the aftermath of that. How is that affecting our body? How is it depleting our health? And then of course, what can we do to help tolerate stress or minimize the impacts of stress? So, what is stress? And it's really important we talk about this because in almost every consult that I have with people, particularly women, I will say, talk about stress and ask them what is their stress like. And almost every woman will say that they are not stressed. But as the consult goes on, I can see they are very pressured, very overwhelmed, or life is very demanding. So absolutely, they are living in a state of stress. So stress can be busyness, pressure, asking too much of ourselves. But stress can also be too much physical output. For example, too much high intensity exercise. Stress can be not eating regularly enough and having blood sugar level imbalances. Stress can be dehydration. Stress can be nutrient deficiencies and also a toxic burden from too many toxins in our environment or in our diet that can cause a toll on our body. Today I'm mostly going to be talking about the mental and emotional stress. So the pressure, the busyness and the demands and how that's affecting us. So stress is a survival hormone. It's one of our most primitive emotions and mechanisms that activates within the body. And it has helped us to survive and to evolve over the years. Stress helps us to move away from danger and towards safety. So it's what is commonly known as the fight, flight, or freeze response. So do we need to fight something to survive? Do we need to run away from something to survive? Or are we just going to freeze and hide? So the key thing here is that it was always intended to be a short-term response. It is such an intense state for the body to be in, and it was only ever intended for those acute life-threatening situations. For example, if we go back to the caveman analogy, was it to run away from a lion and back to our cave so that we could survive? Or in more recent times, is there a car zooming up the road and we need to quickly jump out of the way to survive? So short term and acute. Then we should be able to cycle out of that stress response and go back to a really normal, balanced state. So for life-threatening things, it was only ever intended for life-threatening. The issue is, anytime we feel stressed, your body thinks that your life is in danger. Your body does not know the difference if you are feeling stressed because you're busy, stressed because you're late, stressed because you've got 100 emails to reply to, stressed because you've got an overdue bill to pay, or whether you are stressed because something is affecting your life or threatening your life. Anytime you're stressed, your body goes into that same automatic journey, that same intense mechanism. The thing is, in modern life, stress is constant, or stressors are constant, I should say. We're constantly rushing around or busy or living on little sleep and not enough sleep. It's constant. All of us are cycling every day, either in that low level stress response, or some of us are living every single day in chronic high stress. And this is where the issue lies, because our biology was never set up to survive with stress hormones flying through our body constantly, and this is where it's really depleting our health. So I want to break it down here and describe to you what does happen when we're in the stress response, both in the helpful method and then the collateral damage that happens to other body systems when we're in the stress response. So when we feel those stress hormones, what's happening? Our brain first perceives a threat. That sends messages down our bloodstream into our adrenal glands that live on top of our kidneys. They release adrenaline and cortisol that flies through the bloodstream into all of these other body systems and gets them ready for the fight or flight response. So our pupils dilate so that we can see the threat more easily, and we don't see all of the outside peripheral stuff in our vision. Our heart rate increases so that blood can flow around our body so that we can run away from the threat. Our respiration quickens and we get that shallow breathing. And our blood sugar level increases. Because your body thinks you're up for a big battle to either fight something or run away, you need a lot of energy for that. So all of your stored energy gets pulled out of your major muscle groups and into your bloodstream. But we know high blood sugar level is not good for our health, particularly long term. When we have high blood sugar level, we're more likely to put down body fat because of the excess insulin. We're particularly going to put down belly fat when we've got a lot of that high blood sugar level. We're also at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease with our high blood sugar level too. So I know stress in modern times is really responsible or partly responsible for the higher rate of these conditions too. So then we have the collateral damage. These are body systems that aren't involved in the stress response, but they are affected by the stress hormones. First and foremost, we have the digestive system. If you think about it, anytime you feel stressed, where do you feel it? You feel it straight in your gut. It almost takes the wind out of you. Sometimes we immediately need to have a bowel motion or urinate. And that is literally because your body's trying to lighten your load. It's evacuating so that you can run faster. It's crazy. So what's happening is the blood is flowing away from your digestive system into your major muscle groups so that you can enter into this battle or this runaway. What that means, however, functionally, is when you're eating a meal, when you're in the stress response, you're not digesting it effectively. You've got massively reduced digestive fire, so you're more likely to get bloated after meals, to feel really heavy after eating, or have a really noisy, gurgly stomach, or have IBS, whether that's diarrhea or constipation, or both of them. Our nervous system suffers because our body, and our brain particularly, is really just trying to narrow in and focus on that threat. Then it doesn't have the time or the capacity to think about everything else that our brain and our mind needs to think about. So you're going to notice brain fog, poor memory recall, or short-term memory loss when you're living in that stress response. You're also more likely to have things like insomnia, anxiety, and depression too. Now, our thyroid function is another system that gets really affected by stress. The thyroid is a little butterfly-shaped gland that lives on the front of around our throat region. I'm sure some of you have a thyroid condition or most definitely know somebody who does. Thyroid is the master of metabolism throughout our body. When we release cortisol, it immediately reduces thyroid function. So we all know that there's a bit of a thyroid epidemic going on at the moment, but I feel more likely it's the stress epidemic that's really causing these issues. So our hormone levels are also really disrupted when we're in a state of stress. So for women that are of menstruation age and or thinking about conception and preconception care, this is a big issue. Because you're living in a stress response, you've told your body that your life is in danger. So your body thinks the last thing it wants to do is to get you pregnant, because then you're so vulnerable and even more of a danger of survival. So your body completely shuts down ovulation by reducing the amount of progesterone you're making so that you cannot conceive. So it's important to note, even if you're not trying to get pregnant, ovulating and having enough progesterone in our body is critical for our health. It helps our brain, our mood, our heart, our digestive system, our libido, our skin, so many other things these beautiful hormones do. So the stress response is really depleting. And for women who are entering into perimenopause or menopause, guaranteed, we know stress makes every single menopausal symptom much worse. So no matter where we are in our hormonal life, stress impacts any area. Now, lastly and most importantly, stress causes the immune system depletion. So no growth or repair can happen in a crisis. So whenever we are in that fight or flight response, your body cannot do any of its maintenance or upkeep duties. So that means, growing tissues or healing tissues, creating hormones and neurotransmitters. So we might see this in the body as your skin, hair and nails might be more brittle and breaking, or your skin's lacking vitality or less elasticity. You'll be aging quicker or looking at more older than you are. Nobody wants that. Any wounds will be scarring and will be taking a long time to heal. You're more vulnerable to catching, viruses and illnesses that are going around. But on a more serious note, you're letting yourself more vulnerable to chronic health conditions developing. Your immune system can't keep your cells healthy and protective, so there's even a higher cancer risk when you're living in the stress response. So that's really, really important to know. We hear this, stress is killing us, but I mean it, and I mean it seriously. It really is. So to finish on a somber note, let's bring it back up to something positive. What can we do about the stress? Look, we cannot always avoid it. It's a part of our life. There is stress, there are pressures, there are busyness now more than ever before. We cannot always control the stress that enters into our life, but we absolutely can always control how we perceive the stress and what our outlets are for the stress. So I've got some of the most effective and some of my most favourites here in what I call a stress less toolkit. So firstly, getting enough sleep and a good quality sleep. So ideally, we want to be sleeping between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Or if you have to get up earlier, then you need to bring your bedtime even earlier, 9 p.m., 8 p.m. That's my personal favourite bedtime. So it's really important that we're getting enough hours in bed, because that's when we're getting our rest and restoration. That's when our body's getting that time to shut off and not deal with the stresses of life in the day, to really kind of top itself up. Mindfulness activities, so things like guided meditation, is so powerful. A lot of people have, mixed feelings and views about meditation. We can all see that kind of yogi hippie sitting on a rock, in silence meditating, but that's not what it has to be like. I really like doing guided meditation. So I listen to an app that talks me through the process, so I don't have to try and be silent in my mind. I just listen to their cues and practice deep breathing at the same time. Two apps that I really like is Simple Habit and Insight Timer, but there are millions now on app stores. And really start small. Start with a 5-minute meditation and then, work yourself up to 20 minutes. Next on the list is our breath. Breath is the one thing that immediately stops that stress response in its tracks. That powerful. So practicing slow diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing in for the count of 5, holding for 2, and out for the count of 5. So you can do this when you're in a stress reaction, or practice it multiple times a day. I personally start my day off, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I roll onto my right side and I practice 5 of those diaphragmatic breath cycles. Then throughout the day, when I'm doing really mundane tasks like hanging out the washing, emptying the dishwasher, or driving in the car, I use that as a time to check in with my breath again and do those really slow and replenishing breath cycles. Next on the list is journaling. I'm such a fan of journaling. I find it it's like a brain dump, like a mental cleanse. So if I ever have thoughts that are just rolling around my head and are not making any sense, or anything really emotional that I'm feeling or going through, I just put pen to paper and just write. I don't think about it, I just write. And often as I'm writing, 2 things happen. I either see it written down with a bird's eye view and I can see how absurd it is and that I don't have to be worrying about it anymore. So it just releases all of that emotion. Or, as I'm writing, I come up with a bit of a solution for whatever the issue is. So really, really cathartic. Sunshine. So getting enough sunshine, natural light. We live in a world where we're just bombarded with all of this artificial synthetic light. But seeing the sunshine, particularly first thing in the morning, is really incredible for our stress response. It just reorganizes all of our hormone levels. So if you are lucky enough to be up early and see the sun rise, that is like medicine for our adrenals and our stress response. But as long as you see the sun, as soon as you get out of bed in the morning, it is just as helpful. The one thing that we want to have less of if we are dealing with chronic stress is caffeine. Now look, I love coffee. I'm a barista in a past life, so I really love caffeine and coffee. But we need to get real with ourselves. How often, how much are we having it? How much are we depending on it? If you're living every single day really high stressed, and then you're just having caffeine, you're just putting fuel on the fire and causing yourself to be more wired, more stressed, more ramped up. So if you love coffee as much as I do, it's not to say you can't ever have it, but maybe save it for your more quiet, relaxed days. Maybe save it for the weekend instead, and swap it for herbal teas during the week. Exercise, we all know and love. Exercise is great for our mental and emotional health, and particularly for stress. It's just the most beautiful physical outlet for any of those feelings and emotions that we've got us pent up and wound up. And it's really important that we have a balance of both high intensity exercise or moderate intensity exercise, but also the more low-key therapeutic movements are just as important. And I think our health really thrives when we have a balance of the two. So things like the yoga, walking, particularly walking in nature, Pilates, swimming, anything like that is really beautiful for our nervous system and allows that state of calm each day. And then looking into the diet again, just think green for stress. All of your as many green leafy vegetables are so helpful to offset the negative impacts of the stress response. Green tea in particular is rich with something called theanine, which is a very calming amino acid for the brain. So just think green in your diet. Whole foods, eating your 3 regular meals per day, and you'll be doing wonders for your body. So that is stress in a nutshell, something that all of us are dealing with daily, most days, maybe every single day. So it's really important to know just how it is affecting our body and affecting our health body-wide, and that there are many things that we can do to reduce the impact on your health. But it all starts up here, how we perceive the stress and how we have the outlet for our stress. So think about the things that really resonated with you from this presentation and start with those. Thanks.